close does this thing focus? Not that close. Not that close either. Can you tell I'm far away? Can I get it to focus on my microphone?
Oh man, I gotta turn off that AF lamp.
That's what that is.
Yep.
Interesting.
It's a little weird getting used to not having an EVF and not having like the shutter click.
I love how small this is. It's bigger than I thought it would be, but like I can't. There's no like these. My pinky finger and my ring finger don't feel like they don't have a place to be.
It's a little weird that there's no grip on the right side because it's like it's hard to hold on to.
That's what I'm running into. Yeah, hard to hold on to.
I ordered one of those small rig L handle things because it seems like unless I really need the portability, I'd rather have that on there just to get a little bit extra grip.
The full frame sensor is huge.
Yes, it is.
I love how big it is. The sensor mount is like the size of the camera. Like, how small can we make this? How about the width and height, or just the height of the
look
mount?
at the lens compared to the camera.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This 20 to 60 L mount 20 to 60 is bigger than I thought it would be.
It's the size of the 85 for sure.
Yeah, it's
almost exactly the same.
It's
size.
almost exactly the same size, which is nice because like all these primes are the same size. This is a good weight for this prime too. It's like conveniently small, but at the same time, this is not compact with this lens on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a different lens for travel for sure.
Yep, it is. I do like 20 to 60 as a range. Like this is a great kit lens option.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like? f3.5 to 5.6.
Yep.
That's not bad.
Which is on full frame. It's very reasonable, honestly.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. It's got an AF/MF switch. Seems perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. I don't think it's OIS, but the Panasonic IBIS is so good that like you really don't need it.
Mm-hmm. So the USB and the micro HDMI port are on the right side over the grip.
A little weird.
That is weird.
But at the same time, like this camera probably isn't one where you would be like using those ports unless you had a cage or something.
Yeah, for sure. The SD card slot, single SD card slot is in the battery. UHS 2 though.
Yeah.
Is it actually UHS 2?
I actually don't know if it is or not.
I don't know.
The highest video codecs, I think, are 200 megabits per second.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Oh, wait, no, never mind. It just says it's the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a normal flip screen.
Got the LUT button. So what's weird about this S9 is like it's like you have the top of it, and then it goes down on a shelf, and then the screen is not flush with that second shelf. So it's like 2 levels of plateau.
Yeah.
Which I find to be strange.
It's kind of weird and like blocky on the back almost.
A little bit, yeah. Hard to hold on to is the weirdest thing. Just kind of from like the weight of the camera versus the weight of the lens.
I was definitely, like if I'm walking around with the camera and not taking photos, I was definitely holding it by the lens rather than by the camera body.
Yeah, that makes sense. The body's almost a formality in this sense. It's got 3 customs, which is pretty typical for Panasonic. All this stuff is really stiff. The lens mount is super stiff. The PSAM dial is really stiff. Actually, this is a PASM dial, PASM. It's not PSAM.
Yeah. I probably just need to break that camera in a little bit.
Yeah, I got S&Q mode. And I get why they put the cold shoe on it, but it's a shame it's not a hot shoe.
Yeah.
How many dials do you have? This one's a wheel on the back.
Yeah, you get the wheel on the back, and then there's a dial on the where the shutter is, but there's no other dial.
So what do you have it set to? How are you changing so at the front you have set to your aperture. How are you changing your ISO versus your you just pressing the ISO button?
I think so right now I think the wheel on the back is set to shutter, and the shutter one is set to aperture. And then there's a button on the back D-pad that puts it into ISO mode.
Yeah, I see that. Or now I'm in P mode, I guess. I guess I would just change. This is really similar to like my GX7, except I don't think it has a swirly wheel on the back. That's not bad. Got the quick menu.
Some of the lenses, like the Sigma 45 lens, has an aperture ring.
Okay.
So I think there are some lenses where you could get all 3 controls, but I'll have to decide how to do that, like whether I use auto ISO or whatever I do there.
Yeah, this has a red record button, which is cool. The what is it on the XH2S? I think the on-off switch is around the button, like the shutter button. Have you been rolling this shutter to turn the camera on and off?
No, I haven't had that problem yet. The thing that I keep doing when I pick it up is like I was taking photos with it the other day, and I definitely did try to put my face up to the EVF a few times and then realized that there is no EVF.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
boy,
kind of a funny adjustment.
man. So yeah, you got a Lumix S9.
Yeah, obviously, as you can tell.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We should talk about that on the podcast.
We should. That's a great idea. I feel like the story behind how that came about is pretty unusual.
Well, maybe we should just get into it.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel,
And I'm Lucas.
and we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
Sometimes I forget how to put Do Not Disturb on my phone. And so just hold it upside down and press the action button. And then it vibrates, and then you know it's in D&D.
Easy. So you got a movie corner on here.
I do,
You
yeah.
wanna start with
That's actually going to be first.
Okay.
I listen to the Go Creative podcast. Not I listen to all the time, but I am subscribed. Sometimes I listen to it. It's just not in the regular rotation.
This time in particular, you went creative.
Unlike the Camera Gear podcast, it's not in my regular rotation. Anyway, both the Go Creative and Potato Jet did interviews with Faden Papa Michael, who is a cinematographer for the movie, Bob Dylan movie. What's it called? A Complete Unknown. That's the name of the movie. I didn't actually write it down in these notes. But he was a cinematographer for that movie, and it's like making the rounds because it's in contention for some Oscar or whatever, and they're trying to get nominated. And so they always do like these pieces on different movies, trying to kind of work up some buzz and that sort of thing. But this one is particularly interesting in that Papa Michael, he's done quite a few.
That's his last name. Yeah, we don't know if he's a father or not.
Who knows? Honestly, who knows? I think he is, actually. I think his son has helped him with some movies. So, but he shot like Ford versus Ferrari and Walk the Line and Patch Adams, Chicago 7, Pursuit of Happiness. And this is like a handful, and then this Complete Unknown movie. And what was interesting about this one, and I'm assuming you don't know anything about this.
No, I don't. This is all news to me.
If you want to know more, you can go listen to either watch the Potato Jet video or go listen to the podcast. He tells the exact same story both times, clearly has his notes on which scenes to talk about and which examples to give.
Yep.
But they shot the whole thing on the Venice 2, and they shot basically the whole movie at ISO 12,800.
Interesting.
Like, it was a conscious effort in that they kind of liked the way the grain looked. They wanted the deeper focus of like F8, F11 that you kind of recognize from maybe like 1960s, 1970s era type cinematography.
Yep.
And so they're trying to make it look of the time, and they wanted to really pay homage to all the sets and the scenes that they were able to put together and really kind of give you a chance to see it all instead of it all just being a blurry mess.
This is all going to factor in on a later topic, but please continue.
Nice. I don't even know what that means. I'm excited. So, but they're like, wow, we can shoot it like F8 at night when it's lit by a single street lamp because we're shooting at 12,800.
That'll do it.
And I won't get too much, like, go listen to it if you're interested, but it was kind of cool hearing him talk about like how they did the lighting, and he had these people kind of like walking around with the hand lights because they didn't have to have tons and tons of lights, and he had like his little iPad or whatever where he could adjust the lights. And
I don't know if it was this movie or a different one, but that one thing sounds familiar with like not needing huge setups of people.
That was whenever we talked about the Creator, where they shot on the FX3.
Oh, was that another one where they basically had like a couple people walking around with stuff?
Yeah,
okay.
But they shot it on the FX3, and they used that dual base ISO out at 12,800 so that they could minimize the lighting. This is kind of another example, but with a fancier camera.
Sure. Where
they're shooting at this extreme ISO. 12,800 is not a native ISO for the Venice 2. It's like 800 and 3,200. I don't quite know where it caps out.
12,800, you're getting a lot of grain.
Right. It's not like an FX3 where that is a base ISO of the camera and it's just that sensitive. They did use FX3 for practice and for framing. Like they put a PL mount on it, and whenever they were doing like line recordings and kind of setting up scenes, they used that as and like they actually shot with it so that they could like kind of frame things out. I thought it was interesting. Cool. You know, fairly comparable to, I guess, the Venice 2, this $3,000 camera. But anyway, he had like his light board, and he had people kind of like carry some lights for certain scenes, and they're like, "You didn't turn the light on." He's like, "I didn't need it." But they were able to light more minimally, light more in the scene, which is kind of interesting. Of like this, the technology for sensor sensitivity and how good sensors have gotten is really interesting to hear whenever movies are kind of going outside of what has become the norm, which is just like shooting in studio. Like there's so much stuff that's just green screen in studio, and we talked about the creator in that it was interesting in that they shot on like all of these locations. They were able to do it because they were so mobile because of how they did the gear.
Yeah, it's like a run and gun movie.
In this case, I think they shot on like 60 different locations.
Wow.
Over the course of the movie, but because they had these minimal lighting setups and they were able to do more with less by shooting at these super high ISOs, and it kind of has this interesting look. And then obviously similar to the Batman movie that we talked about, which is that, what's his name? Ryan Johnson. Is that the guy who did Batman?
That sounds familiar.
Anyways, they went on that in that movie. They did like the whole detune lenses, but they printed it. They shot in digital, printed to film, and then scanned it back. They did the same thing here. They went to a company called Photochem, and they used their Shift AI technology, which stands for Analog Intermediate.
They're getting some good SEO now, aren't they?
I'm sure they are. But basically, they printed it to film and then scanned it back. So they shot it at super high ISO, printed it to film, and then like it kind of doesn't matter how grainy it is because it's just going to have film grain on top of it.
That's so interesting that is a reasonable way to do it rather than just applying some sort of digital effect. Like you would think that you wouldn't really get much benefit from printing to film if you're not capturing on film, but I guess they are somehow.
I wonder to an extent how truly random fake grain can be. Whereas actual film grain is going to have variance in crystal sizes and have, real grain structure to it. And I think that some of the, when you're printing to film and like you're actually exposing those images on film, you can in a way, like if you were doing this old school and you were developing the film, you can do things like you develop the main role, but then you go through and you do like a color grade and you have like red, blue, green lights, and you can kind of adjust the tints and the white balance. So you have like green and magenta and white or whatever. And whenever after you do all your actual cutting of the film and you're going to reprint it to like a final roll, you can then make some final adjustments to the white balance and the hues and that sort of thing in these like scan machines where they're doing the printing by applying different color lights through the film. And so I'd expect that whenever you're printing, like you're taking a digital image and then printing it to film and then going to scan it back, you are going to like whatever kind of light you're using to like make those prints will have some sort of impact on like the way the color renders and that sort of stuff. And so you will get a certain kind of look and feel and effect coming back through. It feels kind of like weird and roundabout, but I guess you get the advantage of being able to take all these takes and not have to spend the money on film, but still get some of the film look in the end.
Yeah, I can see how it saves money over shooting on film, but it's just I'm curious, like is this the last 0.5% of quality? And if not, I wonder how long it'll take before, a fully digital workflow can actually replicate this.
I don't think it's a matter of quality and more of a matter of the cinematographer and the director have a certain look in mind, or they're trying to get a certain feel or texture. And this is maybe the most true way to do it other than just straight up shooting on film.
Well, I think what you're saying about true is maybe more of where the reality is, which is like, maybe it doesn't actually look much different than what you could get with a digital effect, but they know that it's different and they did it like the real way and they feel better about that. And I have to imagine that's some of it.
The real way? Because film reels?
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, sure. I mean, someone could take they could expose a white image or whatever, an empty image onto film, scan it back, and they would essentially be scanning back the grain structures, and you could run that into a filter and apply an opacity to it and put it over your whatever in your NLE, and you're filming your NLE, and then there you go. You have a grain effect. That's easy, right? But I think that the other things that happen are the color. Like you are exposing the film, and so the look and the rendition of certain colors and everything will be impacted.
But how is that not just like applying a LUT?
I don't know. That's different somehow.
Okay. You shoot on film. You're on their side on this.
I guess I am on their side on this, but to an extent, yeah, you could probably just do all this digitally.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying the technology's there yet, but it just seems like it should be possible to simulate the film.
Sure.
I mean, I totally agree that when you're taking photos, that's different because digital sensors just aren't good enough to do that. But in this case where it's been captured on a digital sensor, I'm curious, like, at which point in the process is the film giving you something that you can't get digitally?
I'll let you pose that question to Photochem. That's Fotokem, in case you were curious. And they can explain their Shift AI technology to you.
I'm sure they will.
To me, the most, like, that's all interesting. But what really piqued my interest about this was the fact that they shot this at f8 and they shot this at 12,800 for most of the sequencing, even the night shots.
You know,
you don't hear that. Most people don't shoot at those high ISOs.
I think the aperture doesn't surprise me quite as much because I feel like the really wide aperture stuff is more of a YouTube thing and less of a Hollywood thing. I mean, not that you don't see depth of field in Hollywood, but I think you see more movies that are shot with deeper focus than what like your average YouTuber is using for a video.
Yeah, and often you'll see the especially in any sort of Apple TV TV show, you'll see a lot of really kind of creamy backgrounds and depth of field use just to, I guess, like block out for the shooting. It's, I mean, not that it's like lazy or anything, but it's more of a don't really have time or money to flesh this set out all the way. Mm-hmm. We can kind of just use low depth of field to make it fall off, and we don't really need a background, and it can make things cheaper and easier to produce, but it still looks like professional because you got these big old lenses.
Well, and you kind of called it out earlier that one reason they wanted to shoot this at deeper focus is because they wanted to highlight the sets that they put together. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that kind of makes sense that like the opposite of that would be, yeah, if you're trying to not spend too much money on set design, maybe you shoot at a lower depth of field so that you're not focusing on those things.
I'm into this kind of filmmaking. I know that your big budget blockbusters all kind of have their place, and where you're shooting on sets with green screens and that sort of stuff. But whenever filmmakers and directors and cinematographers get out like into the real world and like shoot on location, and I think that it's just a little more tangible. Like the actors are actually working in the space and they have more things to work off of, and I often find that those can be better. But it's more expensive and it's hard to do those things. And I think that having the opportunity to know that you can shoot at 12,800 if you have to on a Venice 2 and still get, cinema, whatever type quality, it's like, okay, great. That means we can trim down on some things that would make this basically impossible otherwise. And you can really kind of cut down on the lighting and cut down on some of the setup and that sort of stuff. And I think it's cool that a lot of the technology is getting to the point where it makes a lot of this stuff possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good example for people who want to start making, videos at home or whatever, where, again, like the camera you have doesn't matter. I mean, not that anyone has a Venice 2 at home to use, but
you never know.
The idea of, shooting at higher ISO, shooting at, deeper depth of field, maybe somebody at home has an older camera that, Micro Four Thirds or something where, you're using your kit lens. You can't be shooting like wide open, low ISO. Like that shouldn't stop you because here are people making a big Hollywood movie and it has grain and it has deep focus. And like those, you can never point to the gear and say that like, I can't make a movie because I don't have the right gear.
That's a good point. So I think that's a good closer for Lucas's Movie Corner. Go ahead and play the bumper, and let's talk about the gear.
Yeah, man, that was really professional.
Thank you.
I don't even know where to go from that. We'll be back in just a moment, but we wanted to let you know that if you'd like to support the show, you can now subscribe to us on Patreon. It helps cover our hosting costs so we can keep the show running, and you might find an occasional behind-the-scenes post on there, like some photos we've taken recently or a mini review of some new gear. If you're interested, you can find us at patreon.com/cameragearpodcast.
On Saturday, I forced you to go to the camera store with me because I was like, Daniel, I've been meaning to sell this lens and this X-T3 forever, and it's time for me to go at least get a quote.
Yep.
And so I tricked you into going with me, and it turned out it was the quarterly or however often they do it garage sale where they're selling off all their used gear and they're giving you like an extra 10% on trade-in. And it was like, wow, what a great day to do this.
Yep. No, I like, let's set the scene a little bit more. We recorded this podcast the other day.
Yep.
And on that podcast, we talked about, I think I said, I want to sell the XT30. And we were talking about, what's the travel camera setup, that kind of thing. And then, after that, you wanted to go, get a quote on that gear, and I decided to go with you. And I think, basically, as we were walking into the store, I told you, I think that they're going to give, a terrible quote. I'm usually unhappy with their quotes. I feel insulted with the quotes that they give.
They've given some bad quotes.
Yes. And I had the KEH page pulled up with the quote for my stuff. I don't know if you had looked. I assume you had also looked it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff.
I could. You want to set a benchmark of what's reasonable for a trade-in value versus independent third party and all that stuff.
So walking in with low expectations could not have been lower.
There's sometimes where I brought lenses there, and it's like, hey, well, here's a quote, and I'll look it up on eBay and KEH, and then they offer 50% of that number. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
No.
Yep. I've had that happen too. But yeah, we walk in and they're doing their quarterly garage sale, which is a big used gear sale. So already that's a fun time to go to the store, right? And we didn't even know it was happening. Did you know it was happening?
I didn't know it was happening. It definitely bad marketing on their part. Maybe I almost bought a Pentax M42 screw camera. They had this gear on the table, and it all had prices on it, and then they had stuff that had a blue sticker on it, and those things were an additional 50% off. Well, yeah, you almost bought
I almost bought a Sony FS5.
Yeah, you did. You're like, Lucas, should I buy an FS5 right now? And I'm like,
it was pretty cheap.
Maybe.
It was pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we go over to the trade-in counter, and we kind of we ended up where we were both trading in gear at the same time. Different people were helping us. I saw
this is a dream of mine. Just me and Daniel just trading gear together.
Just selling camera stuff.
Just buds. Just doing camera stuff.
So what did they? Do you know how did your deal go? I guess they offered you something you were happy with.
Well, I threatened him first off.
Course,
and then he,
under your breath, quietly.
Of course, yes. I offered him a sack of batteries. like way too many batteries. I had a guy. Someone I know sold their Fuji gear and bought a Leica and said, "Hey, Lucas, do you want these batteries?" And I already had 3 W126 batteries.
Were they real batteries? Were they OEM batteries?
Half of them were.
Yeah.
But I had 3, maybe 4, whatever, just W126 Fuji batteries. Yeah. And he's like, "Do you want some of the just stuff that I have that I forgot to sell?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." He gave it to me. And so I ended up with, I don't know, 20 batteries total.
Yeah, you're not exaggerating. You actually had 20 batteries.
Yeah, so I'm like, man, these OEM ones are $60 each, and these these Wasabi ones are probably $10 each. I mean, I had $300 worth of batteries.
I remember you gave me a couple because I got the XT30 and you used that same battery type.
But I'm selling the stuff, and I go, "How much are these?" The guy's like, "Put those away." I don't want those. I only need one. I'm like, "Are you sure?" Don't we just take them? I don't need them. Maybe that should be a Patreon support membership. I'll mail you a W126.
Love that.
Anyway.
So they must have offered you something reasonable for...
Yeah, they offered me something reasonable. It was fine. It was $100 or whatever less than the KEH quote. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, 10% extra because it's garage sale day." And I was like, "Oh shoot." And after he added that, it was $5 more than the KEH quote. And I'm like, okay, that's totally reasonable. I'm not you get more if you do store credit or something. I don't remember the whole deal. But I was like, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I want to be unburdened from the torment that is the Tamron 17-70, and I want the new shiny 16-55 WR Mark II Fuji lens. I was like, I gotta go see if you have this first. You hold that quote. So I went and I talked to one of the salespeople, and they're like, "This is the last one." Yes. And so I was like, signed the paper, and I bought that lens.
Nice. So you're doing that, and meanwhile I'm, trading in my gear. And first of all, the guy gave me the quote for the camera without seeing the camera. Like, I pulled out the box, I had it in the original box.
Very different. The guy took my camera, he looked it over, he's like, couple scuffs here, and I'm like, the sensor's good. And he took it in the back, he sprayed off the sensor, looked at it with a microscope.
Man, I had a quote in hand before the guy took the camera out of the box.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you brought it in a box. He was like, I know what's going on here.
Yeah. And so, the price that he quoted me was, I guess it was about $30 less than what the KEH price was. And so already I'm like, perfect. I don't have to deal with mailing this in. I can just get rid of it today. This is awesome. And then you're over, 8 feet away from me selling your stuff. And I hear plus 10% because it's garage sale day. And I kind of perk up. I'm like, what's that guy talking about? Can I get in on that too?
Excuse me, stranger.
Yep. And so our two sales guys conferred with each other for a moment. And then mine said, oh yeah, that is a thing. And I got an extra 10% on mine.
Hey, handsome fellow over there. What'd you say about that 10%?
Yeah. So I was really lucky that you were there trading at the same time.
Yep.
Because that got me an extra $70.
Yeah.
And suddenly the camera store was giving me, $30 to $40 more than it would have gotten on KEH.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah. Riding high.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you, meanwhile, had gone and bought your lens, and I kind of looked around for a while, but I don't know. I felt like I should probably be, have some self-control, and I'm not going to buy a camera today. I have to tell myself that every time I go in the camera store, but I was like, no, I'm not going to buy a camera today. And so I took my paper up to the counter, basically to get them to give me a gift card for it. And so I'm going to do that. And the sales lady, who was very nice, said, I can give you a gift card for this right now. But if you were to buy something today with this money, you wouldn't pay sales tax on that portion of the purchase. And meanwhile, I have $750 of credit, and it's a pretty substantial amount of money. Let me go think about this. So I took my paper and just wandering around the store with this trade-in credit thing, just kind of deliberating. And, we had been talking on the podcast earlier that day about the S9, and I was like, okay.
Well, you're down to one camera. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I can't just have one camera. So I go back up to the counter and said, I think I'd like to look at the S9. And she said, that's a great choice because it's actually on sale right now. And you can get the camera and the 20 to 60 lens.
Right, because they've been running that deal even on B&H. It's $1,500, and you get the 20 to 60 and the camera.
Yeah, and normally the camera body only would be $1,500. So it's basically you get this kit lens for free.
Mm-hmm. Which list price, it's a $600 lens.
Yeah,
but with the kit, it's $300, so it's $300 off.
Something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd seen that advertised. So I was like, cool. And she said, but actually, we're also running a deal now where you get another lens free, and you get the Panasonic 85 1.8 free with the camera. That's another $600 lens.
I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I got pushed Daniel out of the way. I said, could you say that again? Do you have two of those?
And I was, because at first she just said an 85, and I was like, what kind of terrible lens is this going to be? It's like, no, it's the actual Panasonic 85 1.8.
Yes, it's the one they released. I don't remember if it was with S5 or with the S9, where it's they gave it was the 35, the 85, the 50, and the 85, and they're all the same size. Those lenses,
and that's the only L mount 85 that Panasonic makes.
Right.
You can't, it's not like there's the, cheap one and the pro one. It's just that's the 85.
That is the 85.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, long story long, definitely ended up buying that camera.
Daniel's like, well, I can't not buy this. I'm like, Daniel, no.
You're offering me $900 in lenses for free with this camera.
You just have to. You have to. You have to. And you did.
I did.
And then what happened later?
So, yeah. So, all this happens. It's a great day. I think I told you, as we're leaving, I wouldn't have been surprised if they had stopped us at the door and just started counting out 20s to hand to us, just give us stacks of cash. This is the best trip to the camera store we've ever had. It's fantastic.
Pretty good. It's pretty good that you I kept thinking about how you spent $300 more than I did, but walked away with two lenses and a camera. Yeah. I'm like, something's not fair about this. Yeah. I feel like I did the wrong thing. Maybe I should have bought an S9 instead of buying this lens.
So, as I was checking out, I think the sales lady said, you should probably get on Panasonic's site and, just like see if you can register the camera or whatever. Because when the S9 came out, they were doing this deal where you could get that 26 f8 lens for free with the camera. And like, you might as well just look. And I said, okay.
Yeah, you might need like a paperweight.
Yeah. You never know. Right. And so I got home and I decided, I'm going to check on Panasonic's site because, it'd be funny to have that lens and like, it'd be a good meme if nothing else. Right. And so get on there. They're not running that deal anymore, unfortunately. But apparently if you buy a qualifying like Panasonic L-mount camera, before February 15th, which this was, then you can register and get a free, Panasonic 5018 for like they'll send you a coupon code and you can just get the lens for free. And I looked at I thought, I've already gotten this like free kit lens, this 85. Like, can this be true? And I look at all the fine print, and it sure looks like it. Like, it sure looks like I'm going to get that lens. So I submitted the thing, and as we record this, I haven't heard back from them yet. But I mean,
well, there's a non-zero chance that you will have bought the S9 and got 3 lenses for $1,500.
Yes,
like basically 3 lenses and a free camera.
Yeah, pretty much. Just went from not having any L mount to being like heavily invested in L mount.
I just can't. It's like you hit the camera jackpot.
Yeah, this is never going to happen again. I mean,
no,
this is the peak.
Unbelievable. Just the most ridiculous thing.
Yep.
So you've shot a little bit.
Yeah.
On the camera and I guess some of the lenses. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, so I shot just a little bit with the kit lens, just like around the house.
And what color did you get?
I got the blue one. I think they only had blue with the kit, but I like the blue, so no complaints on that. I shot with the kit lens a little bit around the house. No real complaints about it. So the kit lens is f3.5 to 5.6, but on full frame, like that's not that bad. It's not. I would like a faster lens, but I think that's totally acceptable on full frame. I'd say the one downside of the kit lens is it's pretty big. Like it's the size of the 85.
Yeah, it's surprisingly big. I mean, I'm looking at it now and it is only slightly smaller than the lens that I bought, which is that 16 to 55.
Yeah.
It's not small.
Yeah.
And especially on this mega tiny camera, it is substantial.
Yeah. But like I'm happy for that range, and I think it'll be a good lens to help me figure out what focal length I want out of this camera, which I think sometimes I think that's the biggest value of a kit lens is you can try out a bunch of different focal lengths and see like where do I actually like shooting with this sensor size, and like if I'm going to take this with me just around town, like what am I really looking for, and then I know what lens to buy.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a perfect kit for it. I mean that it's like that 20 to 60 range is like you get that ultra wide and ultra-ish wide, but then you can kind of get a little in the telephoto. I feel like it is really in the sweet spot as far as sure you got your 24 to 70s, but if you're wanting to maybe have a little more on the wide end, and I think of it just feels more like a walking around lens, even more so than like a 24 to 70, which would be bigger than this.
Yeah. Well, and I'm kind of excited about it too, because one thing I could see myself doing with this camera is using it on a gimbal.
Yep.
Like set it up on the gimbal, balance it, et cetera, and then I can go shoot with my XH2S and then stop and pick up the gimbal if I want to do that. Like I like having a dedicated camera for that purpose. And I think 20 to 60 is a great range for a gimbal because you get like a little bit wider and, and all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm experienced enough, I think, in grading vlog that's going to work out pretty well.
Yeah.
So I do want to try to make like a vlog to flog 2 type LUT to see if we can load it into the camera and basically get footage that output straight into the color workflow.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I shot a little bit more with the 85. I took that to an event and just did a little bit of, shot a couple of pictures just for fun. And, I mean, it's still like I've only taken a couple of shots, still getting used to it, but I'm pretty happy with the results I get. Like I feel like, especially in low light, the full frame really does help. I feel like I could notice, kind of better performance there. But really, what helps is that it seems like even when you're shooting at high ISO and getting noise, the noise is smaller because the sensor's bigger. And I don't know,
You can get cleaner
I think you
photos.
can tell. Yeah, I think the photos are a little bit cleaner. And
would you call it the full frame look?
yes, absolutely, the full frame look. But that was all good. I think shooting the camera, the two obvious like things that are weird about it are not having an EVF and electronic shutter only. And those are both going to take some getting used to. Like it's weird not, feeling the shutter whenever you press the button down. And I definitely found myself wanting to use the EVF, in some situations. So that's just going to take a little getting used to.
Yep. I'm pretty excited for you and this camera and what it means for your future. I have this list here of reasons why Daniel's going to switch to L mount, or called Daniel's cases for Panasonic.
I forgot you had that list.
Yeah, so we got lenses, we got possible box camera in the future, which hasn't come. I added LiDAR on here, even though that's, you could, I don't know if that works with the S9, but you can get one of those DJI LiDAR modules. Video features first. I bet you're pretty happy to have histograms. And SSD recording. Can this record SSDs?
I don't think it can. Could be wrong.
Low light ISO performance, GH7 but full frame. That's not really the case for this one. Internal 32-bit recording with external module. That's really just the GH7, but maybe with the S1H Mark II, that's never going to come. And for some reason, SSD recording on here a second time.
It's
on there twice. Yeah. So
no, from that perspective, it's exciting. Just going through the menus. Even this camera, like this little travel camera, has waveform and vector scope. And it has the luminance spot meter thing.
That is one of my favorite features that I don't understand isn't on every single camera.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so
it's like, let me tap one spot on the image, tell me the EV on that spot.
Yeah.
And then you can like adjust your exposure manually.
Yeah, exactly. And so stuff like it's fun to have those features back. When I shot video with it, the IBIS is just like, nobody does video IBIS like Panasonic.
Yeah. It's just super good.
Yeah. So I'm pretty happy about it. I could see it leading to another L mount camera in the future. Like, I've got all these lenses, right?
Yeah, so, man, you got like two potentially three lenses. You will, if the 50 thing comes through, you'll have as many L mount as X mount lenses,
which is ridiculous.
I think, because you sold the Sigma 18 to 50.
Yeah, I sold that one.
And you sold the XT 30. And you still have the 17 to 70 to 50 to 140 and the Sigma 30.
Yeah, and the
Viltrox 75.
Yeah, so I have one more X mount lens.
What I was thinking about how our camera lives have both converged and diverged, and that there was a point in time where we didn't have anything of the same system, and then for a period of time we had 3 of the same lenses and the same camera.
It's true.
And now I think the only lens that we have in common is the 50 to 140, and the XH2 is in common.
Yeah.
So it's like we've fully converged on this like corner of our camera journey, and now have once again diverged.
I feel like there are a couple of reasons that happened. I think Fuji fits you more than me, just in terms of like what we're looking for in a camera.
Oh, for sure.
I think that one reason I ended up converging with you is that just the timing of when I was looking to upgrade my camera gear lined up really well with Fuji's releases, in the sense that the XH2S came out. It was a fantastic camera back then. It's still like super competitive with modern stuff. And it's just think about on the other hand, Panasonic, where they came out with the S5 Mark II, maybe a year after, but
I think so. Yeah.
But the S1H Mark II, like, it's been years and years since an S1H came out, and so sometimes the timing of those things is just, if you're looking to upgrade at a certain time and you want like the new features, it's possible that a certain camera brand may just not have that. But then the other thing was, we knew we were going to be doing, a lot of video projects and stuff, and it made a lot of sense to have the same gear, like both from the practicality of, I like that I can pick up your camera and know how to use it, but also for matching colors.
Yeah, that's been nice.
And I feel like now we've gotten a lot of those benefits, in the sense that, I know how to use a Fuji camera now. Like, I'm not going to forget. But I also think you've gotten a lot better at color matching, to where it's probably going to be a little bit less of a problem now.
Yeah, for sure.
For you to match a different system.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot better at managing color. Especially with all the projects and stuff we've been doing. And I've already matched Lumix footage with our footage all the time. That and the Sony stuff, the old Sony stuff, just because of the music videos. Yeah. But even still, I think about like, you don't really want to like have to change systems, and it's nice to be able to like really invest in a system.
Sure.
But it's like if you take the Daniel approach, not the Lucas approach, then I mean you've owned 3 Fuji cameras and you've come out pretty much on top, and that like you keep buying things that I want and then selling them to me. but like you bought the XT5 and had it for 6 months and then sold it to me for basically even money.
Yeah.
And that worked out for me because like you couldn't buy one at the time and blah, blah, blah. And then like you had the XT30 for a while and I think you took like a $50 hit on that because of like the good deals and like selling it and buying it and that sort of thing. And so it's like, and then as far as your lens ecosystem, I mean, you have 4 lenses,
4 X mount. Yeah.
4 XF mount. But like if you decided to dump that system and go to like a Lumix system sometime later this year, like it's not going to be that crazy to try to sell and then like move on at that point. And it's like, if you know what you're looking for and you know where your upgrade path is, you can often like changing systems isn't always that much of a headache.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like a professional L mount lens, like if you get like the Lumix S Pro 24-70, that's going to cost a lot more than, a APS-C lens. Like, it's like a $1,700 lens instead of what did you pay for the 16-55? Like $1,200-ish?
Yeah, $1,200, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, the lens is going to be more expensive, but yeah, in terms of, what is your sunk cost fallacy, it really isn't that bad most of the time.
Especially if you're not buying new. If you're buying used, you may lose like 20% or something. But like sometimes if like here's 10% back for it being garage sale day, it's like, great, I've kind of made up enough of a difference that it makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you do lose some money, I think in a lot of cases, it's not really enough to matter. Like, it's just like, yeah, maybe I'm having to spend a few $100 extra, to change systems. But I guess my approach has been, I would rather get the cameras or lenses that I'm excited about, like in whatever system that is. And, whatever little money I would save by staying in what I'm in, like, it's not enough to like keep me on something where I feel I can get better, a better something somewhere else. But,
yeah, for sure.
I don't know. We'll see. I could definitely see myself going further into L mount now that I've got, like a good foundation of lenses. Not doing that immediately because there's not really
well, this isn't your A cam.
Right? Yeah, it's not my A cam. I think it could be a pretty reasonable B cam.
Right. And it's not like it's your photo cam necessarily either, right? Like I have the XT5 and that's like, that is my photo camera.
Yeah.
I essentially have stopped taking pictures with my XH2S. But in this case, like this may be your travel camera, your fun camera, but also gimbal camera, B cam, that sort of thing.
I could see myself taking some photos with it because of the low light performance. I think you have maybe a higher ceiling than you do with APS-C.
That's a really good point.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not replacing all of my uses, just mostly because of the body style.
Yeah, like you may want to swap to this for some low light video just because you might get cleaner video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And you get full vlog. So
we'll see. Exciting times though.
Indeed. I got to talk about this lens, Daniel.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you've wanted that 16-55 since it was announced.
Yeah.
And before it was announced.
I was just biding my time, waiting for it to come in stock locally or whatever so that I wanted to trade somehow my 17-70 and get the 16-55. I was okay with losing the little bit of extra reach. It's not that much farther that I think I would notice. And I wanted to switch to the OEM version. I mean, we've talked about the 17-70 quite a bit, and that is a great lens. It is decently sharp, has good contrast, it has great zoom range. Like it's kind of like the only lens you need for most of the things.
Well, it's a 24-105, basically.
Yeah, it's super, super useful. It's a little just, a little barrely on the wide end and a little pin cushiony on the tight end. It's just, for me, it was so big. It's so big. It's not heavy. It's just long.
Yeah. And
I didn't like having it on my camera most of the time. I like shooting primes. I like faster primes, even though it was a 2.8 zoom. And it was just okay. Like it's the perfect like 7 out of 10 lens. And
I don't know if this is a 17-70 thing or a zoom lens thing, but I know last time I shot an event, I was kind of blown away whenever I went from shooting on the 17-70 to shooting with the Viltrox 75.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, not just because I was gathering more light, but it just like even on the camera's screen, I could see that the quality was better.
There are some lenses like that where you switch to a different lens and like the contrast in the lens can be different because of like how it converges light and all this stuff. And you can, I mean, yes, your primes are just going to be better most of the time, but you put on a different lens and it's like, holy cow! Like this is like the way that the light kind of like renders around things. It just kind of looks like just looks better.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I feel like I'm in a moment I'm going to ask you if the 16 to 55, kind of gives you that feeling, but I think it is possible to have that with a zoom lens because that's how I feel when I use a Canon 70 to 200 f2.8.
Yeah, those lenses are so freaking good. The 50 to 140 gives me that a lot. That is a very nice lens. And so the 16 to 55, I need to shoot on it about 10 times more. I've only taken maybe like 60 pictures total, and I want to spend more time with it. Maybe like go do like a photo walk or something and just kind of really just spend some time with it. But like having done like, I'm going to set this up as a webcam and like try shooting at that. I'm going to shoot some video of the dogs or whatever. The contrast of that lens is better than the 17 to 70 offhand, just kind of like a feeling. I'm not A/B comparing them because I sold the other one, though I could go back and like look at all the pictures that I took with the 17 to 70.
Or you could borrow mine.
Or I could borrow yours. Very, very good point. I could compare all three, Daniel. I could take, because I still have the Sigma too. I didn't sell the Sigma 18 to 55. So
there you go.
I kept that one because it was smaller, but like when you hold the two, it's not like that much smaller.
You may be selling that one.
I mean, maybe I probably will, but that lens is so cheap. It's like,
I
don't know if I want to. It's nice to have a second zoom just on hand. I don't own too many Fuji lenses that have the new linear motors, and like this is the newest Fuji lens right now, and it's the newest Fuji lens that I've owned, I guess. Like all my primes are the old like step motor clutch style, and they're like not as good at focusing, and it's basically fine. But I buy them used, I buy them cheap. And also I love the character. And this makes me want, like shooting with the new 16 to 55 makes me want to sell my 23 and buy the 23 LMWR. One, because it's weather sealed and that would be really nice to have, but also the linear motors.
But it has less character.
It does have less character. I mean, but also it might have less longitudinal chromatic aberration. That's kind of annoying is whenever you get that green fringing around, it's like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not long. It's just regular chroma. It's not the... Anyways, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, the new lens focuses so freaking fast.
Really?
Like, it is noticeably better than all my other Fuji lenses at focusing on like moving subject and that sort of thing.
And I assume better than the 1770 was.
Yeah, it's better than that, for sure. It doesn't do the thing where when you zoom, it goes out of focus.
Yeah, I don't understand why the 1770 does that.
I don't know, but it's like
optically, what is happening? That doesn't make sense.
It just it resets the elements. In the 1770, when you zoom, it goes out of focus until you stop zooming, and then it refocuses. Like it goes
kind of annoying for video.
Totally blurry. Yeah, it's basically you can't do a zoom while shooting video. You also can't do a zoom while shooting video on the lens that I bought because doesn't zoom smoothly.
What do you mean?
I think this is more of just like it's a brand new lens and it needs it's got a little break-in period. But I try to zoom smoothly and it just kind of like keeps like slipping, like it's stuck for a second and stuck and then stuck.
Like you mean like physically, like you can feel that or you see it?
Yeah, like it's like if you're like running your hand across a table and like whenever it breaks friction or whatever.
Okay,
it's so like it's like that kind of feeling. Yeah, and like it's just.
Well, if it's a feel thing, then yeah, I could see that kind of breaking in over time.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will. I hope it doesn't break into the point where the lens doesn't stick closed, but that's whatever. So that's been like kind of annoying, like that it doesn't zoom in smoothly offhand, but it also doesn't like do the dumb focus thing. And it's fairly parfocal, so that's all nice. It has a declickable aperture, and I was like so pumped. I'm like, yeah, cool, video, declickable aperture, woo. It doesn't. It's fake. It's not real. It's not like it's all whatever electronics. It doesn't tie to the lens itself, where it's like you're actually moving the iris as you turn the thing. It's all by wire, and it does it by step. If you declick it, it still goes from 2.8, 3.5, 4. And so as you're trying to slowly kind of close down the iris while you're shooting video, you see it jump like from exposure to exposure to exposure.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
Defeats the purpose.
I wonder if that could be a firmware thing.
It might be.
Like maybe they can fix that.
I'm sure. Who knows if you didn't care? I'll go. I'll update all the firmware. I'll see if it's still a problem. But that was so frustrating.
Yeah.
Why even have a declickable aperture if it's still going to act like it's clicked?
I would actually rather it have the physical clicks if it's going to behave that way.
Yeah, me too. Because then it's not going to like slide or anything.
Yeah.
This is really, really frustrating.
Yeah, that's weird.
But otherwise, the image quality seems pretty good, kind of on par with some of the older primes.
How do you feel about size and weight?
I think that it's a good size. It is lengthed well proportionally for the camera. I don't think it's too heavy. They made it a lot smaller than the previous version.
Yeah, I think it's lighter than the previous version too.
It sure is. And so that's all really nice. The end of it's weird on the end where like most lenses, I'm looking at these two lenses in front of me and it just goes straight out, right?
Yeah.
But as far as the barrel of the lens is the same diameter as the end of the lens where the lens cap goes on. And on the 16 to 55, it flares out to a 72 millimeter. Like the body of the lens is 67, and then the lens cap is 72. And I don't know if it's like a matter of they had to do that with the front element in order to make the glass work, or they were just trying to get to a 72 filter thread. But it's just the weirdest thing that it flares out like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, you would have rather it had been 67 probably, because that's what a lot of other lenses are. I have to imagine they would have done that if they could.
I'm sure it's for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, it could be because of the lens hood. Although I've seen lens hoods that kind of like extend it outward in that way.
I haven't actually mounted the lens hood on it yet. Yeah. I probably should do that.
I was going to say the Viltrox 75 has kind of a similar design where I feel like the outside of that, like the very end of that one is a little bit wider than the rest of the lens.
I mean, it just could be a matter of that first element needs to converge the light in a certain way for it to work and be sharp.
Well, the good thing is 72 matches the 50 to 140.
Yeah.
And so you still have like some commonality of filters.
Yeah, I think I have an ND for that too. So I can have like one for my zoom and one for my primes.
Yeah.
I've kind of like, it used to be that everything was 67 and now my 16 is 67. My other two and my 85, then my two zoom. I mean, like I'm all over the place now. I'm like 52, 62, 67, 72.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time where everything was 67.
Mm-hmm. Shame.
Yep. So I'm not down a lens, but I am finally down a camera. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, and you finally got rid of that 17 to 70. Like I think you had kind of held on to it because it had OIS, but now both of your cameras have IBIS.
Right. Yep. That was kind of a big deal is for any sort of, because I mean, I would still shoot video here and there on the XC3. It was my B cam, and not having OIS or image stabilization on the lens was kind of a problem with that camera whenever you were shooting video. And so no longer need it.
Yep. I'm curious if you'll end up keeping that Sigma 18 to 50 because I mean, obviously there's a lot of overlap with the 16 to 55. I suspect the 16 to 55 will have better image quality, and it has a slightly better range than the 18 to 50, but it's also a little bit bigger.
I don't remember if the 18 to 55 is weather sealed or not.
So it's 18 to 50, not
18 to 50. So thank you.
You get a little bit extra on both ends with the 16 to 55.
I know. We'll see. I need to check if it's weather sealed. The size is the main thing of like, this is a really nice travel lens size.
Because that one's a 50, I think it's a 52 millimeter, maybe 55.
Oh, it's so small.
And if you're saying that the 16 to 55 is 72, that's a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like the body is 67 and it just flares out on the end.
Yeah.
But
you can tell that difference. I remember I got the 18 to 50 before you did. And I showed it to you compared to the 17 to 70, which the 17 to 70 is a 67 millimeter lens. And I mean, we know obviously the 1770 is like stupid long, but even just diameter, I was surprised at how big of a difference that was.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see. I know that for travel, if I'm going to bring one lens, I will grab my 16 or my 23 over the 18 to 50 90% of the time.
Yes.
And I think that may just be telling that I don't like zooms unless I'm like really have to have a zoom.
Yep.
Like if I'm going to shoot an event, I'm going to bring a zoom because I feel like I have to have a zoom. But if it's just for me, I'm going to like move my feet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're not shooting events, you have more flexibility to do that. Like sometimes in an event, it's like, well, this is where I'm able to stand. I can't move closer. So you need some flexibility with that. But if you're just walking around town taking photos, then you have a little bit more maneuverability.
I find it so interesting how like one, your kind of your tastes and what you like to shoot change a lot and takes you a while, but also like camera gear is expensive. And it can take a decent amount of time to like work through and spend time with different zooms and focal lengths and that sort of thing. And I mean, I remember when we first got into shooting, a friend of ours bought a Micro Four Third camera and bought 2 primes. And that was, I think that might still be his only lenses for that camera. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, you have to have a zoom. Like, why? Like, 1 prime and a zoom makes way more sense, because like sometimes you just need a zoom.
Yeah.
And now with the things that I take pictures of and like the type of photography and things that we do, I'm like, I almost always just want to shoot on a prime.
Yeah.
I like having the option to shoot really low depth of field and get that light and get my ISOs down. And I like being free of having to make the decision of the zoom. I think that's like the main thing for me, is that I can compose my shot, and I don't have to also decide like how far in and out do I need to zoom in order to like get this exactly like I want. I can focus on the composure of the image at the focal length that I'm at, and it's just like one less thing for me to deal with as far as like shooting the picture.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I mean, I also think with primes, you can see the image quality improvement. Like, that's something that won't show up if you look at specs. If you just look at the aperture and focal length of a lens, then, you know, you might say, well, I can see that this prime is, you know, wider aperture, but maybe that doesn't matter to me for reasons X, Y, and Z. What you can't see in those specs, though, is that primes just look better.
And it's taken me a while to, I guess kind of what I was getting at is, it took me a long time before I even owned a 35 millimeter equivalent style lens, which is the 23. And I loved the 16 for the longest time. I loved the 85 focal length, but I didn't own a 56 for a really long time. And so like I kind of bounced around with like 35s and 16s, and like had the 85 for a while, which is kind of like longer than I wanted. And it took me a really long time to get to the point where I finally bought that 56-1.2, and I really like that as a focal length. But I find that sometimes it just doesn't have enough reach for event things, and I wish I had something longer, which is why I want your 75 1.2 whenever you're going to get rid of it. And I find that like I really love the 16 for anything that's like within 6 feet, but sometimes it's nice to have like a little more reach, but not that much more.
Yeah.
And which is where the 23 kind of just makes the most sense for just as a carry around lens for me. 27 always feels like a little too close. 30 always felt a little too close. 30 was a weird spot for me for APS-C. I had a 35, I had the 30, and I had the 23. And of those lengths, the 23 for me was like made the most sense.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But it took years. Like I've been shooting since whatever, like 2017 or 16 or whatever it was.
Yep.
And it's like, it took a long time and a lot of different lenses to get to the point where I know what I like and I know what I want. And the answer is I want the new 33 1.4 and I want the 23 1.4 LMWR.
It's funny. I have 2 thoughts on this. One is, I think that's why I thought our tier list episode last week was so interesting, where we were talking about all those different focal lengths, because I feel like that's something where we were kind of going through all of our experience with cameras over the last however many years. And that is like hard-won knowledge, in the sense that we had to try a bunch of stuff. And I mean, we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't tried everything. I've never owned a telephoto longer than whatever 300 millimeters.
Yeah. So I mean, not that we have it all figured out, but I think we've definitely converged more on what we like. And I think like if you were to go in blind into a new camera system, you would probably be more informed now about what types of lenses you would want to buy. And that's something that like you didn't have on day one. Yeah,
like for sure. I know that. Like, I know you make fun of me for all the lenses that I own and have like bought and sold over the past however many years. But you're right. Like, when I inevitably switch to Sony or Nikon, I know for certain like which lenses I want, which is the 35 to 150, f2 to f2.8.
Shocker.
No, but like I have a really good idea of on the wide, and I just want to zoom. Like if I switch to Nikon, I would buy that cheap like 17 to 28 f2.8 like ultra wide zoom. I would buy probably somewhere in a 35 to 40 millimeter prime, probably that 40 millimeter f2 one that they sell with the like that might be good.
Yeah.
I'd get an 85, and I would get the other two zooms for the Trinity. I would get like a whatever the 28 to 75 or whatever it is, and then I don't know.
And I guess like all that to say, you know, we were talking earlier about switching camera systems and how like you maybe don't lose out as much. I think one thing that really helps is once you kind of know what you like, it's not like, I get this new camera system and I have to like buy and sell tons of lenses to figure out what I like. No, you probably know, the couple of lenses that are really going to be important for you.
Yeah, you can start with like those two.
Yeah, you start there, and you're not having to spend like thousands and thousands of dollars on buying all these lenses because you already kind of know what you like.
For sure.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm glad you finally got that lens.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to shooting with it. I think that thing's going to just live on my XH2S for a while.
Yeah.
And then
especially because you have the XT5 for like your like doing photography, and so that's kind of where the primes are going to fit in. And it feels like on the XH2S, you're going to be switching between that and the 50-140, like just doing event type stuff.
If we want to be real, I do photography on my Canon AE1 and my Pentax 17.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.